So if you're thinking of moving to the New Hampshire area, one of the last things you might think of after you think of buying what house you want to buy and where you want to be would be insurance, and all kinds of insurance, not just house insurance. So today I have a real treat. One of my good friends, Jennifer Halteman, who is my local insurance agent, is here to talk a little bit about what you need to know when you're thinking of moving to New Hampshire when it comes to the insurance arena. So first I wanted to talk with you about multifamily housing. Obviously, one of the things I love is when people buy their first house and have it be a multifamily, because it can pay them back and all kinds of other great reasons. So what is there to watch out for when it comes to buying a multifamily and home insurance?
So the biggest thing that you want to consider when you're buying a multifamily is what age the building was built. There was lead paint that was very prevalent in the past. And all homes that were built prior to 1969 have a very good chance that there could be lead paint in it. There has recently actually been some legislation put in place in New Hampshire that states that all homes that are being converted to multifamilies require a lead safe certificate. Also, in the state of New Hampshire, the insurance department does not allow us to exclude lead poisoning from a homeowner's insurance policy. A lead certificate, or excuse me, a lead safe certificate is almost always going to be required by an insurance carrier to reduce their risk of having to pay out a lead poisoning claim.
Yeah, so it's something to keep in mind if you're buying a single family maybe and thinking of adding a rental unit, or maybe even you're buying a duplex and you want to add a third unit. You're very likely going to be required by law to make that a lead safe unit. And it's something that we ran into on my own personal property when it comes to, it really does increase your costs when you have a non-owner occupied, especially rental property, where you're renting it out to other people that you might have a risk liability of. And that having a lead safe certificate really lowers the cost overall and makes it,
more affordable,
Yeah.
and gives you some peace of mind. It's not necessarily lead free. It's almost impossible to guarantee that a home could be lead free, but it's more about having acceptable levels of lead in the house. There are ways to mitigate against lead. If you do have a test and it comes up a little bit higher than it should be, you can do a complete remediation, which is extremely costly and not necessarily the best way to do it. Or you can encapsulate, that paint with a special type of paint that will reduce the risk of that lead being gnawed on by a little person.
Yeah, and that might not be something that you can find out throughout the home inspection process. Very often you can get a lead paint inspection during the inspection process of buying a home, especially a multifamily. But you might not everybody knows that, and so it's something to keep in mind when you are purchasing, especially if you're considering adding a unit or something like that.
Yeah, it's absolutely a great idea to make it part of your due diligence. If you're on the mission to purchase a multifamily and it is built prior to 1969, to throw that piece in there.
Definitely. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the most important thing in real estate, which is location. And sometimes, one of the reasons why people move to New Hampshire, and maybe it's the Lakes region or even further north, is because it's a nice, peaceful, quiet. You get a little bit more land in some cases. But being that far away in a rural area can have some adverse effects on insurance, right?
Yeah, there is definitely an impact for when you get a little further away from people, because when you get a little further away from people, you're also further away from fire stations. There are no fire hydrants, so it becomes a challenge for an insurance company to properly rate a home for its risk on what would happen in the event of a fire. So Lake Winnipesaukee is a great example. A lot of the roads that go around there are very long, and you could be at the end of a road and it'd be a 5-mile road, and that means the fire station is 10 miles away because it will take them forever to get there because there's only one road in
and it might
and
be
one
a dirt
road out,
road, yeah,
and a dirt road
exactly.
on top of that. So it's not to say that you cannot find insurance. It's just that the insurance price is going to be a lot higher than a home that's within that 5-mile distance.
Yeah. So that's just something to know, whether you're moving or buying a second home up there. It affects second homes as well, I'm assuming. I think that most people might forget that the proximity to fire stations and hydrants can cost you more money if you're really far away. So speaking of due diligence, let's talk a little bit about the difference between a home inspection and maybe an insurance inspection, and how that might affect, what you should be looking for when it comes to overall condition of the home.
This is a really important topic. Right now, we are in a scenario where we're seeing really large losses with the combination of climate change that's bringing in a lot of storms that people are just not expecting to deal with. We're getting a lot more claims, and those claims cost the insurance carriers a lot of money, and that makes rates go up. Obviously, insurance companies can't control the weather, but they can control a couple of things: rates and who they want to insure. And that comes down to the condition of the home. And what they're really looking for is a home that has pride of home ownership. So these are the things that they're going to be looking for. Once you bind a homeowner's insurance policy, an inspector 90% chance will come out and take a look at the property. They're going to look at the roof to make sure that the roof does not appear to be at the end of its life, that it's not covered with moss and missing shingles and such. That is the main protector of the house. They're going to look to make sure there's no peeling paint. They want to make sure there's no wood rot, whether it be on a deck or soffit or fascia boards or even a detached shed. And then they're going to want to make sure there's no tree limbs hanging over the roof. And then this one I hope never shows up, but they want to make sure there's not excessive debris in the yard. No scrap metal piles, no old vehicles and so forth like that. I know another man's treasures is one thing, but in the insurance world, it's a liability.
It's not what they're looking for.
Not what they want.
So obviously there's a lot of, overlapping when it comes to what you would look for at a typical home inspection and what that insurance inspection is going to take, but it's those specific things to keep in mind. So let's switch gears and talk a little bit about something that's become really popular lately, especially up in the Lakes region, but also along the coast in New Hampshire, which is short-term rentals. And are there any pitfalls that people typically fall into when they're purchasing, whether it's a second home or a short-term rental?
This is a really important one to talk about with your insurance agent or who you plan on using to purchase your insurance, because it's a very specific type of coverage that needs to occur. Insurance is all about rate versus risk. And when you're looking at having people in your home renting your property, they don't have the same pride of home ownership, obviously. And when it is a short-term rental scenario, then you're having multiple people come in and out of the home. That means there's going to be a little bit of a higher risk. And so the property needs to be insured appropriately for that. There are a couple of ways to do it. If it's going to be a straight short-term rental and you never intend on being there, that's one type of product. But some people will use this as a second home and they're going to live in it too, but then they want to maybe help offset some of their taxes and stuff like that and do some weekend rentals and so forth. So you could either purchase a policy that is strictly for short-term rentals, or you can buy a second home policy that allows for home sharing. And that's an endorsement that goes on the policy.
Awesome. Yeah, so it's all about, making sure that you're not just assuming that all insurance is the same when it's a different type of property, and talking to somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's really important to be upfront and forward with what you're looking to do. The last thing you want to do is try to think you're pulling the wool over the insurance company's eyes to save a bit of money, because when a claim happens,
that's when
you could be in some trouble.
Yeah, it can present a huge issue, and make it so that it's potentially something that's not going to be covered. And so
correct, and that's going to reduce your coverages and put you in a bad spot.
Awesome. So let's talk about something that isn't necessarily home insurance, but it has to do with, if you're going to live in the state of New Hampshire, you're probably going to have a car. And so let's talk a little bit about car insurance.
Yeah, so New Hampshire, if you haven't found out yet, is the live free or die state. And we are
in a couple ways,
right, we're the only state left in the United States that does not make you carry car insurance. And this is really important, because if you do not have car insurance, then that's fine. But if you get hit by somebody who doesn't have car insurance, you need to make sure that you have the right amount of coverage to offset what they don't have. I strongly recommend that anybody who lives in New Hampshire and really anywhere in the United States who's a homeowner should carry an umbrella policy. This umbrella policy in New Hampshire will allow you to add an endorsement called uninsured, underinsured motorists, so that in the event you are injured by somebody who does not have car insurance or has just a state minimum, you can actually collect on your own policy for your injuries. So say you're put in a wheelchair, your entire life is going to change. This will give you money to set yourself up for that change.
Nice.
The other thing I would note is that you can't take one policy from another state and bring it to New Hampshire or Maine or Massachusetts or any of those states.
Definitely.
No matter where you are, the car has to be registered, insured in the state that you reside in.
So it's sort of like real estate, it's different selling a house or buying a house in Mass versus it is in New Hampshire versus anywhere else in the state. You have to make sure you're checking with the professionals when it comes to that.
Correct, yes.
Awesome. So clearly insurance is a huge part of the move process. And so thank you to Jen for coming in today and talking with us about it. If you are, tell people where they can contact you.
So the best time to start talking about insurance would be as soon as you go under agreement when you're in that due diligence phase. And the best way to reach us is either to call our agency, or you can go onto our website and fill out a quote request sheet, and we'll reach right out to you and take care of that for you.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.